Hey folks, welcome to a video that's going to walk you through a menu engineering sheet from week 6 for some classes and potentially week 7 if this is another class that's watching this video. So let's download the Intro to Vlookup, XY chart, and ME file. It'll show up in a second here. Alright, so go enable editing. Now remember, if ever you want to get rid of some comments because they're in the way, you just click on review up here, click on show all comments, click it again, and it'll actually disappear. I'm going to zoom in a second so you can see a bit better. So let's go step by step here. Menu engineering, it's a way to evaluate the contribution margin, so the profitability of your individual menu items and the popularity of your individual menu items when you compare them to averages. So on average, is something more or less popular, or is it more or less profitable compared to the average item on your menu? So I'll probably be zooming through quite a few things here because this is something you've learned in another class, and on top of that these are skills that you would have learned in your classes. So the first thing we need to do, we need to first add a comma here. Okay, so if we use the comma style for these numbers, anytime we have something over 999, so in the thousands, if we hit this comma style, okay, and then get rid of 2 decimal places, this looks a lot more presentable now. Okay, so let's add up, and all this is we've got a roast beef dish, a shrimp dish, seafood dish, and this is how much we sold for this amount of time. Now we're going to add these up, so the quickest way is to go into C16, click on auto sum, and press enter. Okay. We'll add a comma on there as well. Okay. Next, menu mix percentage. Menu mix, another way of calling this is the profitability index. Okay. Index. Okay. We could also name it that up there. It's just to compare, of these 30,402 plates that you sold, how many were roast beef, and it shows you a percentage. So we would first divide our 2059 or C6 by our C16, and that would give us this number, which is not really a percentage, so we need to turn it into a percent using the number and then add 2 decimal places. Okay. One thing that I should have done, okay, is I should have put an absolute value on C16. Okay, so if I make this into absolute reference, now if I click and fill, it's going to do C7 divided by C16. It's always going to be C16, which is what I want. So I can press OK, and then I can use my fill function. I could stop at pasta. I like to go all the way to the bottom because this is a surefire way of knowing whether or not you have done this properly, because we should get 100% in D16. And sure enough, we do. Okay. So the way to look at it is 6.77% of our total plates sold were roast beef. So some of these were very popular, some of them weren't as popular. Okay. Now for item contribution margin. Contribution margin is going to be the profitability on an individual plate. What happens with that profit per plate is it's then able to be put towards any other expenses. Okay. So it's the contribution that that plate puts towards all other expenses, okay, once you account for the costs. So for an item, it would be our selling price, okay, our sales minus our expenses for that plate, okay, just like in accounting. So our item contribution margin would be $8.89. So every time I sell 1 plate of roast beef, it should cost me $5.06. I'm selling it for $13.95, so I should be making $8.89. So what I'll do is I'll use my fill function and I'll go all the way to the bottom, so it gives me my item contribution margin. Now we don't need totals here because it's not going to do anything for me. It's just going to tell me for one of each of these plates what's the total. We don't need totals here at all. Okay. What we do need is a menu cost. So menu cost is when we're going to actually look at what was sold but in the bigger picture. So here for food cost, that's for one item. I want to know for all of these items how much the cost was over this time period. So my 2059 roast beef plates that I sold, and it cost me $5.06 every time I sell it. Press enter, and that'll give me, and I got to change this into dollars, $10,418.54. Now, if we want to make life easy on ourselves, we can start to go, we can go our C6 and absolute that. Okay? So we can absolute C6, press enter, and now we can drag across. Okay? That's one way we could do this. Okay? Another way we can do it is just keep this as a, not as a absolute, and just fill down this way. Okay? So that's probably the easiest way because you can get a lot more done. Okay? So menu revenue. We're going to multiply again how many plates we sold times how much it is for one plate. C6 times F6. And we're going to click and drag. So it copies down the formulas and turn these into dollars. And then lastly, we'll go our number sold times our item contribution margin, so how much it is for one. We'll click and fill, and then we'll put a dollar sign. Okay? So all it is we're finding out when we take into account how many were sold, what the cost was, what the revenues were, and what the contribution margin was. Now we can find totals for these. So we can just auto sum menu cost. Okay, so H6 to H15, press enter, and then we can fill it out. Okay? Before we get to our category here, okay, this is where we're going to evaluate whether it's more popular than the average item or less popular than the average item, and we're going to evaluate whether it's more profitable or less profitable than the average item. So we've got a couple things we have to do right here in this section. The first thing is we need a count of how many menu items there are. So we're going to open up our brackets for the count, equals count, open up brackets, and then we're going to highlight just the numbers. Okay? Excel doesn't count words, it only counts cells that have numbers. So A6 to A15, we're going to close our brackets and we're going to press enter. Okay? And this shouldn't be here. So there you go. So 10 items, perfect. Okay? Menu cost. Menu food cost is just our food cost percentage we need to know here. So our total menu cost, which we found out here, divided by our total revenue, okay, for the menu. Now this needs to be expressed as a percentage with 2 decimals. Okay. So the next step here, so what happens here is we know that our food cost was 28.31%. Okay. Now we need to find out the average of all item contribution margins. So this would be this column right here. So we need to find out equals average, open the brackets, and find out an average of these cells, G6 to G15, close the brackets. Now this means that on average, items are bringing in $5.77 for, just on average, that's of contribution margin. Money that's left over after we account for costs that we can now put towards all of our other expenses. And then lastly, our percentage menu mix. This is going to be the average profitability that we use when we start comparing our menu mix and our contribution, or menu mix, category. So we need to go 1 divided by the number of menu items, which we've done here. So let's use a cell reference, then times 0.7. Now, we just used 0.7. This has been a theory that's been going with menu engineering for a long time. No real reason. It's just that's how we do it. We don't go 1 divided by 10. We go 1 divided by how many menu items there are times 0.7. So please make sure you know that. Press enter. So this should be a percentage. So we'll hit percentage. There's no decimals, so we can leave it at 7. Okay? It's very important that you feel comfortable with this because it will affect this last part right here. So now, we need to evaluate whether, and this is contribution margin category. So we need to know whether each item for the contribution margin category, whether each item is more or less popular than the average that we did here. So we have to use an if statement. So we write equals if, open up our brackets and click the insert function. Okay. We need to look at our logical test. What's our logical test? We need to evaluate whether item contribution margin is greater than our average contribution margin. Okay. So is our item contribution margin for the roast beef greater than the average contribution margin for the whole menu? Now we're going to click F4 around C19 because we want to always be comparing to this cell, right? We don't want that to change when we start using our fill function. If it is greater, we want to write high. If it's not, we want to write low. It's very important that you follow the instructions set out here because we need it to look exactly like this later on. So high with a capital H, low with a capital L. Make sure there's no spaces anywhere. Okay, and press OK. So it's high, and if you want to check, item contribution margin for roast beef, 889. Yeah, it's greater than that. That's perfect. And now we use the fill function. Okay. Now for menu mix, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to write an if statement, insert function, and we're going to go logical test. Now, if you take a look at the instructions that are in this cell in L6, you want to compare the menu mix, so the profitability, okay, is if it's greater than the percentage menu mix that we calculated in C20. And we're always going to compare each cell to that C20. So we're going to press enter. First of all, if it's true, high. If it's not, low. So we just want to test whether this item is more or less popular than the average that we've discovered here. And we press OK. So low, so if you take a look, 6.77%. Yeah, that's lower than 7%. And now we can use the fill function. Okay. Now we have one last step for this section, and that's going to be to put together a Vlookup right here. Okay. The instructions tell us formula which looks at the CM category and MM category on the left, contribution margin category and menu mix category, okay, and finds a match and goes to column 2 of the table to find out the menu item class. So we have to use a Vlookup. So first step of Vlookup, let's name this range something. Okay, so I'm just going to name it because it's me doing it. I'm going to name it Mark. You can name it whatever you want as long as you're naming the range something. I'm going to press enter. Now if I click off this range but then I highlight it again, you'll notice that it's back to being Mark. Okay. So now I can start doing my Vlookup. Okay, well, before we even get to Vlookup, we should always name the range first, then start to identify what we want to look at in this table that's in the first column. Okay? So we need to find out somewhere else where it's written high, 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 low, low, high, low, low. So it's going to be something in this table, in the first column that we have to look up. That's going to be our lookup value. Okay? And it can't be inside this table. Those are the rules. So equals Vlookup. Open our brackets, click the insert function button, and then lookup value. What am I looking for? I'm looking for something that's in this first column, but it's got to be outside of this range right here. So we need to combine these two somehow. Okay, so we're going to click on first the CM category. It has to be the CM category first. And we're going to use the ampersand. That would be Shift 7 to get this symbol right here. Okay? And K6 and L6. Okay? And if you want to make sure that you did it right, it actually combines these two cells to merge what's in these two cells. Okay? The table array is the table that I want to look into for the Vlookup. And we just named that Mark. Again, to make sure you did it, as long as you highlighted the headers as well, you should see the headers here first, which is awesome. It means we did it right. And then which column? What do we want to pull from this table over to menu item class? Well, star, puzzle, plow, horse, dog. That's in column number 2. Okay. And now puzzle is what it's telling me. Well, yeah, it's high in contribution margin, but it's low in menu mix. It's low in popularity. So it's a puzzle to me. So I can press OK. And now what we can do is we can use the fill function to fill out the rest. So that is how you go about filling out the actual sheet. Okay, so you need to be able to use a combination of absolute referencing, just cell referencing here, auto sums over here, an if statement, a Vlookup over here. We need a count function. You really are showing us an average function, sorry. You're really showing us how you've been able to understand all of these different functions that we've done so far. Okay. Now it's about analyzing it. So you can look at this and go, okay, well, puzzle. How can I increase the profitability, or what can I do with a puzzle? If I was a restaurant owner, what would you tell me to do? Well, a puzzle isn't very popular, but it's making me a lot of money, so I need to make this item more popular somehow. That can be done through marketing, table talkers, you can highlight it on your menu somehow. You guys are taking menu planning, analysis, and design, and you've taken marketing, so you should have an idea as to how to make things more popular while still keeping this profitability. That would make the puzzle into a star. Plow horse, low contribution margin, but high popularity. So it's not making me enough money, but it's definitely popular. So what can I do to bring this up? Okay, to bring my contribution margin up. I can reduce the cost or I can increase the selling price. You just have to be careful how much you're increasing prices by and how much you're reducing prices by. Is this even popular to make, is it even possible to turn this into a star or to try to? And then a low and low would be a dog. So it's not popular, it's not making me money. So what is this? What are we looking at? It's a pasta. So maybe we can do a different type of pasta. Keep a pasta on the menu, but reinvent it. Okay, that's something that we could do there. And that could increase the not the profitability, but the popularity. Okay, and then maybe we want to find something completely different, which has a cheaper food cost, or we increase it, the new selling price, because it's such a new thing. Maybe we can bring out this new price, and then hopefully that'll help out the profitability of the item. Okay? So it's really, you just have to come up with some interesting ideas as to how you can increase the profitability. Now a star, you're thinking high and high, perfect, no problem. Well, if it's so popular, okay, what if we increase the price slightly? Okay? What if instead of $10.95 we went $11.25? My revenue here is currently $25,754. My menu contribution margin for that item is $17,569. By just going to $11.25, if I sold the same amount of items here, I'd go up to $18,275. If I click undo, okay, you'll see the difference here. So it would have been a difference of about $600, $650 roughly. That's awesome. If you can use Excel in your analysis, okay, so first of all, by analyzing, explaining how you compared it to $5.77, which is the average contribution margin, actually write out $5.77. You compared it to 7% popularity, write 7%, okay? But then when you start to get to your recommendations about how you could help the profitability and the popularity of menu items, start to play with Excel. Okay, so again, let's look at this. The puzzle. Okay, so it's low in popularity. If you can suggest to me that, hey, you think you could increase how many items you're selling of this by 1,000 somehow, you have to come up with a really good reason. So if we go 3,059, okay, you've increased the popularity to the point where it's a more popular than average item, so it's a star now. Now, if you take a look, I've made $42,673 in revenue. If I click the undo and go back to what it was before, holy cow, by selling 1,000 more, I've made about $14,000 more. Okay? Now, that's a lot of items to think you're going to be able to sell more of, but start to play with your Excel sheet. The only thing I would suggest is when you start doing this, only do one thing. Okay, change one cell and then click the undo button so that you make sure you're submitting the accurate information that's needed for the analysis. So that's it for your for how to fill out this menu engineering sheet. Okay, in the next video, I'll be able to show you how to build an XY scatter graph that's representative of this sheet. Okay? So this just took 19 minutes to walk you through it, and I was taking my time actually doing everything and explaining everything. So in an in-class assignment, you should be able to do this a bit longer than this, obviously, but if you study hard enough, this part should be fairly quick, so it leaves you enough time for the analysis and the chart. So the next video that'll follow will be how to build the XY scatter graph.